Israel-Hamas war. Daily pauses in Gaza fighting will begin. Israel has agreed to put in place 4-hour daily humanitarian pauses in its assault on Hamas in northern Gaza starting on Thursday, the White House said, as President Joe Biden pressed Israelis for a multi-day stoppage in the fighting in a bid to release hostages held by the militant group. Biden said Thursday that there was no possibility of a formal ceasefire at the moment, and said it had taken a little longer than he hoped for Israel to agree to the humanitarian pauses. Biden had asked Israeli Prime Minister Benjamin Netanyahu to institute the daily pauses during a Monday call and said he had also asked the Israelis for a pause of at least 3 days to allow for negotiations over the release of some hostages held by Hamas. Yes, Biden said, when asked whether he had asked Israel for a 3-day pause. I've asked for even a longer pause for some of them. National Security Council spokesman John Kirby said that the first daily humanitarian pause would be announced Thursday and that the Israelis had committed to announcing each 4-hour window at least 3 hours in advance. Israel, he said, also was opening a second corridor for civilians to flee the areas that are the current focus of its military campaign against Hamas, with a coastal road joining the territory's main north-south highway. Biden's push for an even longer pause comes as part of a renewed diplomatic push to free hostages taken by Hamas and other militant groups to the Gaza Strip during their October 7 surprise attack on Israel. Israeli officials estimate that militants still hold 239 hostages, including children and the elderly, from the attack that also saw 1,400 Israelis killed. U.S. officials say it believes fewer than 10 Americans are among those held captive. Kirby told reporters Thursday that pauses could be useful to getting all 239 hostages back with their families, to include the less than 10 Americans that we know are being held. Humanitarian pauses can be useful in the transfer process, he added. Indirect talks were taking place in Qatar, which also played a role in the freeing of 4 hostages by Hamas last month, about a larger release of hostages. Qatar is a frequent go-between in international dealings with Hamas, and some top Hamas political leaders make their home in the Gulf country. Kirby confirmed that the U.S. continues to have active discussions with partners about trying to secure the release of hostages, noting in particular Qatar's help. Secretary of State Antony Blinken had warned Israel last week that it risked destroying an eventual possibility for peace unless it acted swiftly to improve humanitarian conditions in Gaza for Palestinian civilians as it intensifies its war against Hamas. French President Emmanuel Macron had opened a Gaza aid conference on Thursday with an appeal for Israel to protect civilians, saying that all lives have equal worth, and that fighting terrorism can never be carried out without rules. Kirby said Uzra Zeya, the State Department's Undersecretary for Civilian Security, Democracy and Human Rights, Special Envoy David Satterfield, and Sarah Charles, who leads the USAID's Bureau for Humanitarian Assistance, were representing the U.S. at the Paris conference. Israel has not been invited by France to the conference. Kirby demurred when asked about the decision to leave Israel out of the international talks. We're focused on trying to have the most constructive conversation there that we can, Kirby said.